He wasn't even told she had data. That was the first betrayal. The second was seeing his cousin post a blurry photo of the casket captioned, "with nothing but a dove emoji," and realizing the funeral had already happened. Jasper Monroe stared at his phone screen. Numb. No one had called. No one had texted. No one had even whispered that Grandma Helen was gone, but he was still breathing. And in that breath lived a truth no one in his family wanted to acknowledge. Jasper had always been her favorite. Not the kind of favorite who got extra dessert or secret birthday money. No, she'd seen something in him that the rest of the family tried to ignore, something quiet and gentle. Gentle, a boy who looked at the world differently. And when he told her, trembling, that he liked boys and not girls, she didn't flinch. She simply said, "You still love. That's all that matters." She was the only one who said that, the only one who didn't disappear afterward. The rest of them did, one by one. The calls became short, then stopped. Invitations dried up. At first, Jasper thought it was just distance. He had moved to Portland to paint murals, to breathe somewhere his name wasn't followed by silence. But the silence had followed him anyway. It arrived through birthdays unacknowledged, Christmases unmentioned, and 1,000 small absences that stacked into a wall. And yet he still called Grandma Helen every Sunday, without fail, even when her memory began to flicker, even when her voice grew weak. He never stopped. Now she was gone, and they didn't even let him say goodbye. He scrolled through the funeral photos like a stranger. There was his brother Curtis, arms crossed and expression cold. His mother, sitting front row, head bowed like she carried some unbearable grief. Jasper wondered what they'd said about him. Or worse, if they said nothing at all. Erasure was always more brutal than insult. He sat in his small studio apartment, surrounded by unfinished canvases, and let the reality settle. His family had written him out. Quietly, efficiently, permanently. But what they didn't know, what he didn't know yet, was that a phone call was coming. One that would unearth a secret buried deeper than grief. A secret Grandma Helen had left behind, just for him. And when the truth surfaced, it wouldn't just rewrite the family's legacy, it would burn the script entirely. If stories like this speak to your heart of hidden love, of quiet strength, of being seen even when the world turns away, subscribe to Heart Stories. Because sometimes the ones left out of the photo hold the truth no one else dares to keep. It happened on a Wednesday evening, the kind of evening Jasper Monroe didn't mark on a calendar. The light in Portland had already turned soft, that pale amber glow that made every surface look like it was remembering something. He was wiping down a paint-streaked countertop when his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. Area code New York. He almost didn't answer, but something in his chest twitched, a strange pressure, like someone whispering through the cracks of his ribs. He picked up, expecting spam, maybe a gallery follow-up. Instead, a calm voice spoke, "Mr. Monroe, my name is Simon Hartford. I'm an attorney in New York. I represent the late Helen Monroe." Jasper froze. Simon spoke carefully, each word laced with a professionalism Jasper hadn't heard in years. "Your grandmother retained me to draft a private testament, a last will and testament that differs from the one recently filed in Texas." Jasper didn't know what to say, didn't know if this was real. The voice continued, "She executed the document here 2 years ago. It was witnessed, notarized, and filed securely with my office. She asked that I not release it until after the funeral. I understand you were not present." Jasper's throat tightened. "I wasn't invited." There was a pause. A quiet kind of empathy lived in that silence. Then Simon said the sentence that split the floor beneath him. "In that will, Mr. Monroe, your grandmother named you as the sole heir to her personal estate. The house, the family land, the art collection, the entirety of her liquid assets." The room tilted. Jasper sat down slowly, legs refusing to hold weight. "Why me?" The attorney didn't rush. "Because, in her words, you were the only one who showed up without being asked. The only one who called when everyone else forgot her name. She said you saw her, Not as a matriarch, not as a burden, but as Helen. And she believed that people who see others that clearly are the ones who deserve to carry forward what's left behind. It wasn't about money. It never was. Jasper could barely register the logistics legal handoffs, property deeds, timelines. All he could feel was that a door had creaked it open in the past. One she'd left ajar, quietly. As if knowing this moment would come, he thought back to the last call they shared. Her voice was faint that day. She said something he didn't fully catch. He remembered her repeating his name twice, as if anchoring it in her breath. And then she laughed, so soft, saying, "One day they'll remember what they tried to forget." Maybe this is what she meant. Maybe this was her way of giving him not just a house or a name on a will, but a kind of exhale, a kind of proof that he wasn't wrong to love her, that his absence at the funeral didn't erase his presence in her life. Still, doubt pressed its weight on his chest. Why had she hidden this? Why not tell him? And what about the others, his mother, his brother Curtis? How would they react when they found out they'd been cut out entirely? He didn't have those answers. But Simon Hartford did say one last thing before hanging up. "There's something else she left for you, Monroe, a video file. She asked that I only give it to you once you accepted the will. It's titled For Jasper. When I'm gone." Jasper stared out his apartment window, the lights of the city beginning to blink alive like distant stars. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of being remembered. Tomorrow, he would board a plane to Texas. But tonight, with Charlotte, he sat in the silence of a studio where grief and grace existed side by side, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel forgotten. The air in Texas was thicker than Jasper remembered. Maybe it wasn't the heat. Maybe it was the silence he carried in his chest, the kind that grew when every step back home reminded you of a door that once closed behind your name. He arrived in Burnell County 3 days after the call, a town stitched together by memory and appearances. The same church bells still rang on Sundays. The diner still offered half-priced pie. But now, as he walked past the family home, his grandmother's home, he wasn't a guest. He was the legal owner. And everyone knew it. Word had traveled fast. By the time Jasper entered the small courthouse, eyes were already on him. His mother sat in the front row, arms crossed, lips pressed so tightly they disappeared into her face. Curtis stood near her, shoulders squared, jaw locked. Not a single nod, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. He was still invisible to them. Their attorney wasted no time painting a picture. Helen Monroe, advanced in age, possibly confused, coerced into signing a second will during a visit to New York. They cited memory loss. They brought in a pastor who said she hadn't attended church for months before her death proof. Somehow, that her mind was slipping. Jasper sat still, letting them speak, letting them cast shadows with words. Then he stood. No lawyer represented him. He wanted to speak for himself. He began simply, "I called her every Sunday. I was never too busy, even when she forgot what day it was, even when her stories looped like broken records. I stayed on the line because she mattered." He didn't raise his voice, didn't cry, but every syllable carried the weight of being erased. "I wasn't invited to her funeral," he said, turning slightly toward the gallery. "Not because I was estranged, not because I left, but because I told the truth about who I am, and that made me easier to forget." The judge watched him closely. No interruption came. Then Jasper pulled out a flash drive. "She sent this to her lawyer. She asked that it only be played if her will was contested. I haven't seen it either." The court clerk loaded the video onto a monitor, and then she appeared. Helen Monroe, frail, sitting in a blue cardigan on a patio chair, sun resting on her shoulder. Her voice, though soft, was steady. "If you're watching this, I've already gone, and someone's probably trying to say I didn't know what I was doing. Well, I did. I've lived a long life. I've made mistakes. One of them was staying quiet when I should have stood up for the people I loved. I won't make that mistake again. She looked directly into the camera. Jasper is my heart. He never stopped calling, even when I didn't deserve it. He made me laugh when my bones ached. He sent me a hand-sewn quilt when no one else sent flowers, and he never asked for anything in return. So yes, I left him the house, and yes, I left him everything else. Too, because when the world forgets you, the ones who remember deserve more than a thank you. They deserve a legacy. Gasps echoed in the room. Someone near the back began to cry. The screen went black. No rebuttal came. Curtis didn't speak. His face hardened, but his eyes told another story, one Jasper couldn't read just yet. The judge ruled in favor of the valid will. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to swarm him, but Jasper said nothing. He walked past his mother without meeting her gaze, past his brother, who stood motionless under the weight of a truth too long buried. He didn't win anything that day. He reclaimed it, the truth, his name, and the last words of a woman who saw through the silence. The house creaked like it remembered him. Jasper stepped through the doorway of the home he'd last entered as a teenager, back when he still called himself just quiet instead of what he truly was. The smell hadn't changed: cedarwood, lavender, and old books. Dust floated in narrow beams of light like spirits suspended in thought. Nothing had been touched since the funeral. The china cabinet was still half open. A cardigan hung over the arm of her chair. A tea mug rested on the windowsill. The waterline faded but visible, as if time had refused to dry the last of her rituals. He walked the hall slowly, fingertips brushing wallpaper he once stared at through fever dreams as a child. The house didn't feel haunted. It felt paused. In the bedroom, beneath a wooden jewelry box, he found a sealed envelope marked in thick handwriting, "Jasper, only if they tried to erase you." He didn't need to open it. The video had said everything. But he kept the envelope anyway, tucked it into his coat like a pulse. Weeks passed. The legal formalities unraveled. Keys were handed over. Accounts transferred. But Jasper didn't return to Portland. Instead, he stayed. Neighbors watched with caution at first, unsure what kind of family fallout had taken place. Some muttered that he was the artsy one or the one who disappeared. But he didn't vanish this time. He hired contractors, cleaned the place up, kept the garden the way she liked it, wild but not neglected. And then, one Saturday morning, he posted a sign on the front lawn: "Open studio, free community art space, LGBTQ welcome, coffee and conversation on Sundays. Bring a story, not a resume." People came, teens who never spoke in class but whispered whole worlds onto canvas, elderly women who crocheted memories into soft scarves, a man with a quiet limp who once taught literature, now offering poetry readings on the porch. The house was alive again, not with ghosts, but with presence. And then Curtis showed up. Jasper saw him from the kitchen window, standing on the sidewalk in a pressed shirt, looking like a boss dressed in a man's apology. He didn't ring the bell, just waited. Jasper opened the door, but said nothing. Curtis stepped inside, took one long look at the space now full of color and breath and story, and then turned to his brother. His voice barely rose above a hum. "I was the first." Jasper frowned. Curtis looked toward the window, his hands in fists. "I came out to Grandma when I was 18, right here, in this house. I told her I liked a boy in my senior class and that I didn't want to tell anyone else. I was scared. She held my hand the whole time." Silence, he continued. "Then Dad found out, said I was just confused, told me if I ever said it again, he'd cut me off. So I rewrote myself, dated girls, said the right things. You came out a few years later, and he faltered. "I hated you for being braver than I was." The words hit like soft thunder, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Jasper didn't respond right away. The walls around him weren't just plaster and wood now. They were layered with all the things left unsaid between brothers who once shared a bunk bed, who once traced the same constellations through different windows. Curtis took a breath. I wanted to ask for forgiveness, but that's too easy. So instead, I'd like to help. He held up a folder, his application to volunteer at the center. No signature yet, just a quiet offering. Jasper looked at him, at the man who once erased his name from invitations, now asking for a line in the story he'd tried to burn. Maybe this was the final gift Grandma left behind, not just a house or even vindication, but a key. One that didn't fit a lock, but a silence. He nodded once. Okay. And in that moment, the house truly became theirs. Not through blood, not through law, but through a shared scar and the decision to stop hiding it. Autumn arrived quietly in Burnell County, brushing the trees with gold and rust, folding a hush over the fields like a wool blanket pulled snug over memory. The house, once still, once silenced, now hummed with slow, steady life. On weekends, laughter echoed from the porch. The scent of brewed coffee drifted past the gate, the mailbox filled with letters, not bills. Jasper stood by the window one Sunday afternoon, staring at a group of teenagers gathered under the maple tree in the yard. One of them had bright blue hair and a sketch pad resting on their knees. Another leaned against the trunk, reading poetry out loud. Soft and brave, stowaway. He let the sound wrap around him like a song he didn't know he missed. Curtis walked in from the kitchen, sleeves rolled, holding a tray of mismatched mugs. He said nothing, just nodded toward the kids outside, then placed the tray gently on the side table and disappeared into the living room. No declarations, no performances, just presence. And Jasper had learned that was enough. Later that night, while sorting old boxes in the attic, Jasper found something pressed between the pages of an unmarked book, an envelope, yellowing, but sealed. His name written in familiar ink, the curve of the J unmistakable. He took it downstairs, sat in her old armchair, and opened it. My dear Jasper, if you are reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to say these words while I was still alive. Maybe I was scared of what it would cost you. Maybe I was ashamed of what I couldn't fix. You were the only one who didn't ask me for anything but my time. And I wish I had given you more of it. When you came out, I didn't understand everything, but I knew no part of you was broken. No part of you needed changing. And anyone who made you feel otherwise, well, they were the ones who forgot what love really means. I saw you, Jasper, even when the family pretended you weren't there. Even when your name wasn't on the guest list, or the photo frame, or the family tree they loved to display, but not update. I left you the house because I knew you would fill it with truth. I knew you would invite in the ones left out. I knew you'd build something softer than survival. And if Curtis ever comes back, don't close the door too quickly. He carries a shadow in him you may not recognize. He's been pretending longer than you think. Grief is strange, Jasper. It peels us open, but maybe that's how the light gets in. Love always, even from the quiet. Grandma Helen Jasper read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it beside the photo of her in the living room, the one he'd taken on his old phone years ago, where she wore sunglasses too big for her face and laughed with her whole mouth. That week, they painted the attic into a reading nook, added a rainbow window decal that filtered light across the room like stained glass. On the front steps, someone carved a sign from reclaimed wood. Helen's house, everyone belongs somewhere. They didn't talk about legacy, they just lived it. On the last Sunday of the month, Jasper stood before a small group during open mic. The sun dipped behind the roof, casting long shadows across the porch. I used to think being left out was the worst thing, he said, but sometimes being pushed out is how we learn to build something better. Not to prove them wrong, but to make space for people who've never even been invited. He glanced at Curtis in the back, hands clasped, eyes soft, and he smiled not out of triumph, but of recognition. Then Jasper asked the room a question. What would you build if no one ever made you feel like you didn't belong? If this story stayed with you, moved you, or reminded you of someone you love. Don't keep it to yourself, share it. And if you believe that stories can heal the silences we've lived through, subscribe to Heart Stories, where every voice has a place, and no truth is too small to be remembered.